Welcome back to Search Sean. This is another Chat with Sean episode where we speak to some of the best in the industry. As usual, we'll start with some quick updates on the channel, and then we get into my great guest today. But generally, as usual, so much going on. I recently chatted with James Congdon all about the latest going on in the, job market, digital job market, the trends and patterns they're seeing as a recruiter. Really interesting to see what's going on because we hear so much about AI and everything. I also caught up with John Goody, all about AI automation, data-driven SEO, the future of agencies, that kind of thing. He really knows his stuff, and that was a fantastic chat. And I also caught up with Miriam Jessia and Julia Panotto, all around psychology of search behavior. And something we'll probably touch on today, but user behavior and intent and things like that. And they obviously really know their stuff as well. And this is why I love this channel, because I talk about, the job market to automation to psychology all in a few weeks. It's fascinating. And today kind of is another fantastic one because I was thinking about this, and he's probably one of the OGs in my mind, because when I first started in the industry, his name was cropping up everywhere. And it was definitely so I put him as one of the OGs in this market and, in this industry. And I'm obviously talking about Ben Steele here. And Ben is currently a senior content marketing specialist at Siege Media and was the former managing editor at Search Engine Journal. So yeah, thank you, Ben, for joining me today.
Oh, thank you, Sean. It's really an honor to be involved in that lineup of people. Like, what a cool lineup of guests you have.
Yeah, it is a treat for me because I learn about all the different, sides of digital marketing. It's really it's a really privilege for me, actually. And obviously speaking to yourself, as I said before. So we have come up with some previous kind of topics that we're going to cover today, but, we'll see where we go. But there's some really strong topics out there, and you have some really great points of view on it. So I'm really keen to hear that. So kicking off, it's going to be awesome. And starting off, it's just, what happens when we get intent wrong, and how can we dig deeper into understanding it beyond the traditional funnel?
This has been a bug in my brain for a really long time, and I rant about it whenever I can. So thank you. So the SEO tools you use, right? They usually will categorize search intent into 4 categories. And so we're talking about informational, transactional, navigational. Oh, I forgot commercial. And it's a useful categorization when you're looking at a content strategy. But my problem with it is it's kind of like, I call it a funnel with a data-driven tattoo on it. It's just a new way of categorizing very broadly queries into their place in the funnel. And I don't like funnels. They have their place, but search intent is so much more complex than that. And I think the danger when you don't look at intent more deeply than that, when you use the categorization on the surface level, is that you don't look at people's actual circumstances, their true needs, their emotions, and their psychology when you're planning your content. And so you need to dig deeper than, and I'm standing on the shoulders of giants here. Lily Ray talked about this in her 2023 MozCon presentation. And then Corey Morris wrote an article called There Are More Than 4 Types of Search Intent on Search Engine Land. And so, this has been a conversation in the industry for a while, but I've been thinking about, my way of thinking about it is that there are 3 layers to intent, right? And most people stop at the first layer, which is utility. And that's, what does the user need right now? What's their immediate goal that drove the search? And that's where the categorization comes in. And that's where I love that folks like Lily and Corey have been trying to educate about, hey, there's a lot more to it. There are intents about finding tutorials or finding a location or fixing a technical problem, finding entertainment. And now with generative AI, we have new types of search intents that are like, do a thing for me, create a thing for me, right? But the process I'm working on it's 3 layers: utility, context, and emotion. And so you have the first layer, which is what you need right now. And then we have context. And I like the context layer because it tells you what you shouldn't include in content. This is, how much does a user already know? What have they heard before? What steps have they already taken? And how is their query related to a future goal of theirs? And I'll get into an example here in a minute. This is like, where do they actually exist on their journey, and what do they already know? And then you have emotion, and this is what you need in the copywriting to build trust with the reader you're speaking to. So how are they feeling, and what tone should you take in order to come to them in their emotional state and actually assure them that you're the answer? I'll pause there.
No, it's fantastic. I think it's a really good point to make, because like you say, so when you like use these tools, you know, like you say, they're very categorized into just these 4 types, and it doesn't really give you much information. Like, it's just like, most of it it's common sense, or 1, but 2, it's what do you do with that afterwards? Like, it's just doesn't really give you much additional information about it. So yeah, keen to hear more about like an example, your kind of theory, your kind of process.
Yeah, sure. And it's like, if you look at, for example, a definitional query versus a how-to query, those both fall under informational in terms of intent categorization, but you have to approach those differently. I call how-to the most dangerous words in SEO, because if you're not on your own creating a resource that allows the user to actually do the thing in the real world, then you're done. Like, there's no point. So that's, you know, an example of how people can sometimes get the utility wrong. But I thought it would be a fun example to do a keyword USB versus XLR, since we're on a podcast. It's got about 630 monthly search volume. So like, not bad, right? If you're looking at getting some long tails, if you sell microphones or you're in the audio industry at all. And so looking at the utility, we're going for a technical comparison between 2 microphones. We're probably looking for, it's a versus keyword. So people want analysis of price, use case, technical requirements, all that standard stuff. But then we have to look at the context, and the context is, you know, my first question is always, what does the user know already? Because that helps you not waste people's time. And that's where most SEOs get content wrong. When they get content wrong, it's time wasting, in my opinion. So the context of USB versus XLR, my opinion, if someone is using XLR in a keyword, they know more than your average person about microphones. So you're already dealing with someone who is informed. And so there's an amount of content that you probably won't want to include, and we'll get into that. So they probably know more about mics than most people. They're likely to be semi-professional or aspiring in an industry like podcasting, streaming. Maybe they might even be a singer, or they might want to be a voice actor. And they've probably heard things about both. So they're likely to have preconceived notions and things they've heard about each type of microphone. And then we go to emotion. What is it that this person is feeling? Well, if you look at the context, they're probably thinking about upgrading from a USB, which means that they're probably dealing with price shock, because an XLR setup is expensive. You need more gear. So they're probably dealing with some technical intimidation. It is pretty complicated to set up an analog XLR microphone, feed it into an audio interface, and then from there go into a PC. And there's a lot that can go wrong with all those additional connections. And now you're dealing with a more complex piece of tech. So there may be some intimidation there. They're not sure if they're capable of doing it. But on the other hand, if this is a semi-professional or somebody who is aspiring to be Maybe they're a hobbyist who's trying to upgrade. They're dealing with desire. They maybe want to develop a stronger professional self-image. They might be seeking clarity and reassurance. And maybe, just maybe, they're looking for your permission to splurge on an upgrade. So that's the full context, right? And so I went to page 4 for this query and pulled up a bad example. And then I went to the first example, and I want to read just the first few sentences of each, because the example on page 4 is, I feel like, a very standard like SEO introduction that I can see a lot of people writing. And in half of the space, the first result does so much more. And I think it's kind of a subtle genius piece of copywriting. I want to explain why. And I'm not saying that the first result used my way I think about things. What I'm trying to do is say that using this framework, you can understand why this. I'm not saying that it works because of the 3 sentences I'm going to read, but proves that this person understands what they're talking about and is capable of creating something that ranks first. Like, they deserve to be there, and I'm going to try and show you why. So first, I'm going to read the six sentence introduction piece I found on page 4. Right. So, when looking to capture audio for a podcast, broadcast, or other recordings, there are 2 types of microphones available. There are USB and XLR microphones. With their own set of characteristics. Depending on what it is you want to record, you may prefer to choose one or the other. But what are the differences between a USB microphone and an XLR microphone? And what are the pros and cons of each of them? Come with us as we guide you through USB versus XLR microphones and give you all you need to make an informed decision. Like, I feel like that's a pretty common SEO introduction. What do you think?
Yeah, it just seems a bit generic. And then obviously, like, the last bit sounds quite AI, like, come with us to do. That's kind of like an AI thing, it sounds like.
Yeah, it could be a little bit of AI. The core sin that this introduction commits for me is everything it does is tell the user everything they already know. They're saying it's 6 long sentences that basically tells me all the stuff I already know that drove me to read your piece. So, like, both have their own set of characteristics. Yes, I know. That's why I'm here to ask you which is better and to compare them, right? So why are you telling me this? I already know this. So let me read you 3 sentences. I'm sorry for all the reading of the first result. And I want to talk about why I think they're freaking genius copywriting. So we have 3 sentences here. And the first sentence, well, I'll just read it. So, you might have heard some things about XLR and USB microphones. For example, XLR microphones sound more professional, or that USB microphones are less of a hassle. Let me tell you something. I'm an audio engineer and I use both, but for very different reasons. And I'm going to stop there because that is already doing so much more work than the 2 paragraphs I read you before. I really love the way he used the example, what this sentence sets up. So, for example, XLR microphones sound more professional, or that USB microphones are less of a hassle. These are both true. These are both facts about each, but by setting them up this way, he's confirming things that the user already knows in a specific way. And so that's proof that this person knows what they're talking about, right? They are also suggesting through the use of examples this way that there's more to it. They haven't stated it, right? But they are suggesting that there's more here. So I've told you things that are true. I've told you things that you may have already heard. And I'm also suggesting to you that I've got more to say. And then let me tell you something. I'm an audio engineer and I use both. This isn't just flat truth. It's not just saying I'm an audio engineer. It is, but it's also saying I've used both of them. So what is this? This is proving that they have used and have experience with each, and they're also proving that there's a use case for each, and so that there's a deeper discussion to be had, and that there's a lot that the user will get out of this article. So it validates the space and emotions that someone is feeling, It tells them stuff that a little bit of what they already know while suggesting there's more to it. And so I just think this is fantastic copywriting, and it does in 3 sentences what the previous piece couldn't do in 2 paragraphs, right? So that's how I would use that framework to understand why this copywriting is effective, and how I would try and replicate this across a different query.
Yeah, and I think obviously that could be adapted to any form of content, I presume. But yeah, I think that's the thing when people are creating content, they're so worried about all the different types of people that could potentially land on that page that they try and please everyone, but then it ends up potentially pleasing none of them. And that's a bit of a problem, I guess. So that's why you really need to think. And like, obviously you can get data to back it up, but a lot of it, like you explained, it was just kind of common sense when you break it down.
You're right. It is common sense. And a lot of it feels, and when you read it, you kind of, you get it, you feel it, just from the tone of the text that one of these people knows what they're talking about and one of these people doesn't. But to get the vibe out of that, you kind of have to take some time to break down what does this query actually mean, and think about, it's Alex Lieberman has a B2B content agency called StoryArb, and they talk about your audience of one, right? And if you can really get specific about who your audience of one is and speak to them, there's more than one person that feels that way. There's likely a lot of people that feel that way and can insert their circumstances into your writing and create the relevance if you're being super specific about who you're speaking to.
I guess, does this kind of change now with conversational based search, coming in more into it? I know we're going to touch upon it a bit, but do you think, because obviously it will be like the way people search for things is going to change, and the way people get directed to websites and so on will change. Do you think that changes this kind of framework at all, or is this an adapted one? Or
it's, I think that for now, you can use this framework to do some great work at the top and mid funnel. How that changes when Google releases AI mode as default, that's an interesting question. I think that you will always benefit from speaking to people in the way that you think they want to be spoken to. I think that no matter how the channels change and no matter what happens, if you're doing that, you're doing the right thing, and your challenge becomes distribution, right? And that is the core challenge of a lot of content right now. But I think that this baseline of understanding what it is that people need from you, the space in the journey that they exist in right now, and how best to speak to them, that is never going to not be useful, no matter what the UX layer looks like.
Yeah, totally. And actually, it leads on nicely onto the next point around, so why has top funnel SEO become so boring? And how can we make it genuinely interesting for people again, not just for search engines?
Yeah, that's a tough one, because there's a lot of stuff that you do for SEO maintenance that is kind of necessary. So for example, like you're defining things and doing queries like, what is this versus this? And how do you do this? And a lot of that activity is necessary, but it's also boring as heck. Do people, especially, and I spent the last few years, especially when I was at SEJ, in the B2B world. And this is a particular sin of the B2B world, of making really boring, very basic content that doesn't actually appeal to experts, right? So if you're trying to reach people who are experienced, who are experts in the thing that they do, then a lot of the top funnel content just doesn't work, because a lot of people don't use experts to write it. And so how do you expect to appeal to people who know stuff if you're not getting other people who know stuff to write the stuff, right? So that's very basic, but I think I can maybe go into some examples,
Yeah,
specifically in B2B. I love what AHREFs does with their content and their YouTube channel specifically. So there's a couple of videos here that I like. Google's latest update destroyed this gamer's 1 million business, or how this goat website makes 150K with almost no traffic. That's really fun top funnel stuff. It's, appealing to people in your market, who are kind of at the top of the funnel, but it's giving them stuff that is actually clickable and actually watchable. The gamer one, it's saying to folks who have small businesses that rely on Google or SEO, like, hey, we get you. We see your problems. We understand where you're coming from. This is an investigation we did about just a guy whose business got destroyed. That's very poignant for like a B2B company to be making something like that, right? And then the goat website, that's just fun. People like to have fun. It's a neat little it's just a neat, interesting thing for people to watch. Heck, I have their book. Is it right here? I have their book. They made a book about SEO. And I have it. It's a really cool book. BB the Link Builder did the forward. It's like, what a cool thing. So I that is my problem with how people think about the top of the funnel, is that no one wants to do cool stuff. And if you're not just thinking about cool stuff to do, then you're putting yourself in a box, the what is box, right? What is this? What is that? How do you do this? How do you do that? And that's just boring. And it might be necessary, but it's how we got here, right? It's how we got to this place where no one cares about the top of the funnel because the LLMs are cannibalizing it. And yes, I disagree with that practice. I disagree with Google scraping and stealing everything and serving it to users in their own UX layer to try and cut you out. I do disagree with that. But a lot of that stuff is boring. A lot of the stuff we were making is boring, and it's boring and basic. And so it's easy to scrape and steal and repackage. So I think that, I still believe in the top of the funnel. I still believe in engaging and delighting people in your market who aren't ready to buy your stuff. Like, that's marketing, right? But we have to want to do cool things.
It's a great point. And yeah, if you've got those links, definitely share them, and I'll put them in the description so people can check them out. And yeah, we've had BB on a couple of times, and she's great. she is fun.
Yeah.
How to create fun, that's for sure. But no, you're right. I mean, when I talked to John Alderson, he had a hollow theory about the internet, and there's obviously dead internet theory and stuff. We weren't going through this loop of just kind of like duplicate content, just crap really, of just like the same old thing recycled, and like say how to, what is, blah, blah, blah. And maybe now with the tools we have with AI, and take the AI taking away those sort of terms as what to go after, maybe that does open the door for more creativity. Hopefully, it won't be all just AI creating its own fun things and generating that, and the internet's just full of AI doing AI generated stuff on the internet.
It's like, my current company, Siege Media, we do studies and we release data. And so the team just did a great study about user engagement in search versus ChatGPT, released it on the blog. And there's data people can use. And I took a similar position at Search Engine Journal. Like, the most effective things I released were like trends and survey results and data, things that people can use to make themselves look smart, to start conversations in their company or their group, or group of peers, and win arguments, like to convince people to care about the things they care about. That's some of the most interesting messages I got. I once in a while, I get a message that's like, hey, you helped me convince my boss to care about SEO. That's B2B content, my opinion, right? Like, so I love what we're doing on Siege Team in terms of like providing people with useful stuff that can make them look smart, right? And it's the same on social media, on like LinkedIn, for example. That's a very similar take. You see people who are professional LinkedIn influencers, or they do ghostwriting on LinkedIn, and they're saying like, you got to give people stuff that they think will make them look smart, and then they'll share it.
Yeah, 100%. And there's obviously some really good people at that, like, you know, Mark Williams Cook, obviously Billy Ray, and Leila Solis, you know, name a few. Yeah, no, it's true. And, you know, hopefully like the internet will be revived again, and actually a place that you want to go. Obviously, like in future, websites will have to, if you're going to want people to click on you, you're going to have to create something unique and special to actually convince people to actually go on a website.
Yeah.
You know, so if you don't do that, you're not going to be seen, or people won't click on it. So, you know, I think people are going to be forced into that situation, really, or be left behind. So, you know, in terms of the next topic is LLM driven content flattening the internet, as we just discussed?
Yeah.
What can we do to build an online world where people still care about it? Obviously, very much touching on what I've got a guest.
Yeah, you got an extra guest.
So obviously we just discussed it, but like, what do you feel people can do about it, apart from creating like the kind of content we've been discussing, but any other ways?
Yes, like the premise that, you know, my beliefs about LLMs are that we are going to enter a cycle of regression. Regression to the mean is a phrase that I got from Stephen Klein, founder of Curiouser.ai, which means that LLMs push outputs toward the most statistically probable. That's just how they work, right? And also they get worse when they're fed AI content. So more AI content on the internet, and LLMs do eventually add that kind of stuff to their training data. And they're also retrieving queries. They're going out and making synthetic searches. And now that may not be adding to their training data, but it's pulling AI generated content into the LLM for the LLM to interpret. But that's not the whole problem. It's not just that LLMs get worse because of AI content. I think, in my opinion, people are so obsessed with optimizing for LLMs that they are willingly making their content less interesting and less user-friendly. And so even if the AI isn't creating it, we have a lot of folks in marketing who are creating AI-like content that is being fed back into the system. And so this regression is going to get worse and worse and worse and worse, because in the meantime, people who care the most about the things they create are looking for ways to protect their content from AI, to stop AI from crawling in. And so on one end, you have the creators who care the most looking for other channels to distribute their content, and trying to stop AI from getting at it. And the people who care about it the least, in my opinion, I'm not saying I'm a marketer, I'm an SEO. I'm not saying it's all of us. I'm just saying that a lot of us don't really care about what we're putting out there for its own sake. We only care about the results it gets, the visibility it gets. And so that is creating this loop of exacerbated enshittification. And it's just a recipe to accelerate it and to kind of create this snake eating its own tail thing across the whole internet. So I think the way out of this for brands, for marketers, is to make a distinction between platforms that people's attention are held hostage to and places on the internet where they enjoy being. Because there's a difference. And I think that there are a lot of like user metrics that don't take this into account. So people who are using social media platforms who may feel trapped by them, right? Facebook, for example. There are a lot of people who would rather not use it, but feel like they kind of can't leave because it's where their friends are. It's where their connections are. It's like a social hostage situation. And the same with Google search. And these platforms where they might be the only choice. I think that's one reason that LLMs got such a huge surge in users, is that people are sick of only having one choice, right? So I think it's important that we understand that there are places where people have to be and places where they like being. And the job of a marketer going forward is to understand where people like being online, to find ways to engage with them in those places without making them worse. That's the problem that Reddit is encountering right now, right? Everyone thinks that Reddit is great and it's the next new big thing. And a lot of marketers are rushing in there without understanding it and making it worse. And Redditors are mad about it. So that's a cautionary tale, in my opinion. There's huge potential in Reddit. Brent Sartoris, one of the co-owners of Search Engine Journal, has a Reddit. He's big in Reddit marketing, and he was with Reddit, I think, since close to the beginning. He's got a lot of interesting stuff to say about how to use Reddit well, and it's about understanding the community. And so this is going to be the job of marketers and even SEOs, because SEO is expanding into a multi-channel discipline, and we're going to need to get it when it comes to what people enjoy and what they like, and also to respect the fact that in a lot of cases they don't want us invading their spaces. So what does it look like to be part of their experience without invading it? And I think that that's a challenge that a lot of marketers are going to face.
Yeah, great point. So it's going to be interesting, isn't it? Because no one really knows what the future's going to bring. Everyone's kind of second guessing what potentially could happen.
Yeah.
You know, if you read the sort of mainstream kind of timeline, what they're predicting, it's kind of that, okay, LLMs are kind of like quite far behind Google now, but eventually they will sort of build their user base, which does seem to be the case. People still will use Google, but as well as LLMs, but Google is going to adapt to a more conversational based engine anyway, or platform. So then, you know, and the way that they read content and they extract things, there's certain ways they extract things. So their argument is, if you adapt your content to be easier to be extractable, you know, because less and less people will be going to websites directly in the future. So I guess people are just like, should we future-proof ourselves now at the potential risk of displeasing actual users, or try and do a halfway house sort of situation?
Yeah.
Or do we just leave it in the current setup and kind of do we not that bothered about traffic or visibility on the large language models and whatnot? So I guess people are kind of trying to work out what the hell to do, I guess.
It's a really tough situation. And I think that there is a middle ground we can find. I think that I call it information retrieval content designed to be retrieved by AI. That is just going to be the survival tactic that people go to as Google especially moves to keep users, right? So there's a part of me that's like, what is the point of making my content a really good user experience if Google isn't going to send users to my experience? So I definitely take that. And for LLMs and for Google's eventual rollout of AI mode, I think there's a place for that kind of content. But I don't think you should ever forget, when you're writing that content and when you're developing your content strategy as a whole, that you also need to be solving problems, bringing delight, and helping people in the places where they're looking for that. And if you do that, like, I still believe in gated content, for example. I still think there's a lot of people like, ungate everything, gated content is dead. I still believe there's a place for gated content. It just has to be good enough, right? So people will endure friction to seek you out if you're offering them something good enough. And the platforms are working their hardest to introduce friction to people leaving those platforms. Social media has been doing it for ages by suppressing posts with external links, for example. You just have to be better. And so there's a part of it that is, yes, engineer the content and optimize the content for retrieval if it's the kind of query that can be answered in a chat window, because that is just what users are going to do. And so that's the experience you need to be included in. On the other hand, be better, like also make content that's better. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I mean, totally. And yeah, it's actually been proven recently that the large language models are clearly being trained to keep users on for longer, keep them talking and actually be persuasive in keeping the user going, and actually starting to prompt them when they've gone away to come back and talk to them and stuff. So, that's, they're turning into that sort of model as well. And like you say, one thing that a lot of people are predicting, and obviously it makes sense, we've seen with Reddit and stuff, the more things AI slop, as they call it, and we've seen it this week with Sora. I'm sure if anyone's been online, they've just seen so many Sora videos, it's unreal. People are going to want real life user-generated content, so if you can create that unique user-generated content, you can create that unique data stuff, like you said earlier, these sort of things were going to be picked up and they're actually interesting, and they're people going to seek out to find that sort of information still, but all that explainer stuff, unless you really have something unique to add, like expert insights into it or whatever, then just leave that to the AI, I guess.
I mean, if you have a reason to be making that content, if you are the authority on it, then do it. Like that, I think that's the core problem with a lot of content, is that SEO has trained people to create content that they don't deserve to rank for and expect it to do well. And that is only going to get worse with AI. So Kevin Indig did a study of AI mode very recently, and one of his findings was that Google AI mode only sends people out to your website when they're ready to make a purchase. And a lot of the consideration layer is being taken over inside the chat window. A lot of the comparisons and the features and benefits and all that stuff, people are only clicking websites when they're ready to go buy. And so, absolutely, we need to be thinking about how to optimize for those experiences, because they're going to be forced on people. And most people won't take those extra steps to circumvent those experiences. So you need to show up there. That's just a reality of the market. But you should also think about where people enjoy their time and how to be part of that experience. It's both. It's not either or, in my opinion.
Yeah, that makes sense. And in terms of, the user journey as well, like if you have forms or, that conversion funnel, whatever you want to call it, obviously with agentic coming into play now, you have to make sure that's a smooth journey and isn't bombarded with loads of crap that doesn't need to be there, to make sure that people, whoever it is, a user or an AI agent, is capable of getting through it with ease and is a nice journey,
Landing page UX is going to be a thing. I feel like that's going to need to be something people pay very close attention to.
Yeah. And I guess we're talking about, I was interested about this actually, because it's not something I've discussed much on this channel, but it's definitely something that's cropped up a lot, in terms of what I'm seeing of the closed communities, gated content, that kind of thing. It's interesting because, like you say, a lot of people would say in this day and age, everything should be a lot more open. Like you say, everything should be, but actually a lot of the news publishers, especially, who are probably under a lot of threat right now, they seem to be all going on this gated community, this kind of like paid for access situation. So that's interesting. But what can we learn from like the likes of LinkedIn and closed communities about creating content that people actually want to share with each other?
I am begging marketers to go and talk to regular people about how they feel about the state of the internet. Because I run a Discord community, and it's a niche community for creative people, for writers and artists. And we talk a lot about tools inside this closed community. And we recently, this just a me example, right? We recently were all like, we're really sick of Google Docs, and we're not comfortable with the fact that Google is shoving AI into everything. So are there alternatives? And as a community, we crowdsourced. We're like, what about this? What about this? Oh, I've tried this. I've tried this. And eventually we all settled on the best option being a tool called Ellipsis, which is like a Google Docs alternative. And we're like, it's not feature complete. There's a lot of stuff missing from it, but they have really good privacy and AI policies. And so this is and everyone in the community hopped on, right? So this is a part of product discovery, a part of branding that I think a lot of people miss in Slack communities, in Discord communities, in closed or semi-open groups. Semi-open, I would say, is like Reddit. It's open, it's on the internet, but it's kind of closed because there's rules and mods, and you can get banned if you, for basically, if a mod doesn't like you, depending on how their rules are set up and how good the mods are. So there are all these different ways that people section off to create an internet for themselves that looks a little bit more like it used to be with islands. Those of us who are elder millennials will remember what the internet used to look like for all the main platforms, right? Where it felt more like a series of islands and places that people are creating that experience for themselves right now. And I think it's evident in the rise of newsletters. Newsletters, huge right now. Really? People are making money out of email inboxes? Like, how old school is that? But it's because I think people crave human curation. I think, hey, I saw this and I thought of you are the new most effective words in marketing. It's online. It's like word of mouth all over again, because it's people individuals often curating in their newsletters interesting things, right? And if you're interesting enough, you'll get included. And you make one interesting post, somebody with 200,000 newsletter subscribers says, hey, that's cool. They put it in their newsletter. Oh, it's free advertising, right? So, and it's about finding ways to become part of the curation experience that people are involved with, right? So how can you get talked about is, I think, an important thing that people do really overlook. And that isn't about selling. It's not about advertising. It's about providing people with good experiences and giving them things that they genuinely want to tell to each other. And those community experiences are extremely effective. They're also almost impossible to properly track. So, there's that, especially if it's a closed community, right? But you can do it after the fact. You can ask people how they found out about you. And that sort of intel directly from your customers about where they're seeing you. I think that's going to become very important.
Yeah, 100%. Like it's it kind of like what you said earlier, I think, about why many have gone to the large language models, because it was just like the internet was just so predictable. It's just the same old websites, certain ones dominating, and no other ones got a look in anyway. So it's just like, Amazon for shopping and like BBC for news in the UK, it's just certain ones, and then there's just like no point to anything else. And then now, and with all the AI stuff involved in that, it's and the way social media sites have kind of gone, You know, I mean, I don't log in. I kind of switched off all my socials, to be honest, apart from LinkedIn and like YouTube. But
Yeah.
when I did go on Facebook, it was just this rubbish. It was just like, but if I, like you say, if you go in like a community that you're interested in, it does have to be marketing, but any sort of topic, it's just people that you connect with, you know, and you're being shared things that interest you from a unique perspective. It's just like so much more enjoyable. Like you say, it was like back in the day, like in the 90s when we had to go on the internet.
Yeah.
That was the same situation. Like you say, it was little forums and chat rooms about certain topics. And it was just like, you felt part of something special. And then it just turned to like this thing that the internet is today. And yeah, hopefully it's a revival of sorts. And like say, like newsletters and closed groups and WhatsApp groups and stuff like that. Yeah. Which is gone.
I think Google knows it, right? Like the elevation of Reddit and freaking Quora is doing well in search right now. That like, if you had asked me a few years ago, if I like, hey, what website is going to dominate search results? Quora would have been the last thing I said. But yeah, it's because I think Google knows that people crave hearing from other people. Who would have thunk? Right. And that's one of the powers of Reddit is there's no pretense really in Reddit because everything's anonymous. So people say what they mean. They talk about what they feel. I stole those words from Brent. So sorry, Brent. And so I think, and so Google knows it, but at the same time, they're trying to create this homogenized experience that traps people. So it's, part of me is like, make it make sense, Google. Like you clearly know what people want. But we're all full steam ahead on inshitification anyway. So
yeah. It's kind of like say Google have obviously identified certain areas like social media. That's why they're introducing more social, more short videos into the mix, and obviously Reddit. But then that's kind of a problem because as soon as you introduce these things, it's like, well, me and my, our mob like SEO and digital marketers, we take the piss and we just overdo it, and then it kills the whole thing. Like you say, with Reddit being overtaken with like digital marketers and stuff, and we're taking away the sort of originality of the whole point of it in the first place. So
that article that The Verge released about how we all ruined the internet and we were really mad about it. I'm looking at what's happening with like Reddit right now, and I'm like, shit, I think they were right.
Yeah. Actually, on this, because you clearly know your stuff, and it's a bit of a gripe with me. Wikipedia, I did a whole video about Wikipedia about.
Oh yeah,
in the concept of it is fantastic. A community-led platform that covers topics, a variety of topics. But then obviously there's been some controversy around some held back from editing. There's editing wars. There's out-of-date information. There's very few editors for how many articles there are. And, and it's very much used in the search. It's probably the most cited on ChatGPT, for example. It's on YouTube results. And the demographics of the people, editing is totally way off in terms of like variety and inclusion and stuff. So it's a bit of a crazy thing. But I was just like, for me, I just feel it shouldn't get, at this point when Google are trying to hit home about EAT and up-to-date fresh content and all this, it seems like Wikipedia should not be really as included and as visible as it is on all these major platforms. But I just wonder what you think, really.
That's interesting. I'll have to watch your video because I like Wikipedia. I really do. Like when I was in school, everyone was like, oh, you can't use Wikipedia as a source. Don't ever use Wikipedia. And I'm like, why not? It's a community project. It's relatively open. And so here's my thing about Wikipedia, warts and all, right? I'm sure the problems you're discussing, I'm I believe you. I would need to research them further to come up with a more informed opinion. So consider this my knee-jerk, uninformed reaction about
Yeah,
Wikipedia.
I sprung it on you,
right?
so it's my fault.
I think Wikipedia is one of the last bastions of what the internet used to be like, right? Where it really is something that seems to me where it can be difficult to hide bad behavior on part of the people working inside the platform, because everything up there is public. And if you put something on there that somebody says, oh, hey, that's wrong, they can just go and change it. And so, yeah, editing wars, sure. That seems like fun drama. And if the problem, of course, is if that culture becomes too homogenous and it doesn't allow different perspectives in, that just like anything, it can devalue the information that's on there. But I like and respect Wikipedia as a platform, and I think it's one of the only places left that takes a true, I guess, everybody talks about democratizing things with AI. I think that's bullcrap. I don't think AI democratizes anything. That's my take.
No, it's fair enough. And like I say, I think the principle is great. And
Yeah.
you know, that is what the internet should have been. And it should be about, is that kind of, you know, community engagement and will contributing to something. I think obviously it'll be interesting. My next news episode, which will be out in the next week or so, well, a couple of weeks, it will include an interview with Larry Sanger, the co-founder of Wikipedia, left, and he had some interesting things to say about the situation. But yeah, it's a tricky one. There are some very controversial things going on in there, but the principles there, I think they need to be freshen things up. You know, they've obviously it's grown to a stupid amount of pages and articles and that, and they just haven't got like the people power there to be able to control it and manage it. So they need to, I guess, they need to integrate some form of AI or something to help promote. I don't know, but
Yeah.
and obviously that kind of may defeat the purpose. I don't know, so it's going to be interesting. And then in terms of like just finishing off, I guess, in terms of like the gated stuff, you know, say you are thinking of doing that or you already got it, you know, how should we rethink about gated content programs today? Because I always wonder, like when I go on to like the Telegraph in the UK or Wall Street Journal, and they're like, you have to pay to read the rest of this or whatever. Like, how do you make that work? Because how many people actually want to pay for content? How do you make sure in that first few paragraphs you let them read that you're getting enough over to convince them to pay for the rest of it?
That's a tough one. When I did gated content programs, they were free. They just asked for information, right? Which is a type of expense, I guess, in this day and age. But for publishers, I don't know what the answer is. Publishers are between a rock and a hard place, right? Because if they don't want to be overtaken by the LLMs, then they need to do something to try and protect their content. And courts are not doing that quickly enough to save their businesses. And so, but the other model is, okay, well, people have to pay for it directly, and convincing people to pay for stuff convincing people to pay for information in an information-rich environment where there's way too much information already out there for free for people to consume. Yeah, that's a tough deal. I think that, you know, I do pay for a local newspaper, and I got to be honest, I pay for it because I believe in it. And I think it's cultivating that belief in what you're doing and why is just as important, if not more, than the actual content you're making. And your content has to be good, don't get me wrong, but in an environment like this, for publishers, for content producers, it's consistently brilliant content create loyalty, but you have to engage with building the belief system of the people you're engaging with, keep them coming back, because times are hard for people and they're looking for things to cut, right? And I'm sorry, but when times are hard, your subscriptions become, the first things that they cut. So it's a convergence of issues, right? It's an economic issue, it's a belief issue, it's a market and availability issue, it's a quality issue. It's hard to convince people that you have quality if you're gating everything. And I think that the certain number of free articles based on I think they base it on IP or whatever. I think that's probably a better model than you can read 3 paragraphs and then you hit with paywall. My issue with that is that pisses me off. So even if I want to read the rest, I won't, because I'm go away. But that's annoying. But I pay for my local news. I believe in it. So bridging that gap is, I don't know what the answer is, but I think it's the problem that you need to work on is the belief system as well as the content. And I think some media outlets done that really, really well. I think if you wonder why an outlet you don't like and you see that they have crappy content, you're like, why do people like this? Why do people pay for it? Because they've invested so much in building a belief system. And that's how enshittification works, definitely, is you insert yourself into somebody's life and establish a belief system about why they're subscribed to you and how that resonates with their identity. And then you make the experience worse, but it doesn't matter because they're already caught. So what if you did the first part without the second part, right? What if you created the belief system and then you didn't make the experience worse? What if you consistently make the experience better? That's where my mind goes.
Yeah. And do you think with the rise of AI content and stuff, and people adapting content and obviously creating its own AI content and all that sort of thing, do you think there'll be a rise in kind of gated, paid or free? You reckon there'll be a rise in gated content?
I can't predict the net because I think it goes both ways. I see a lot of people being like, ungate everything, especially marketers. In this day and age, why are you hiding from the visibility channels? And I see a certain amount of sense in that. But my opinion is to lean into it, to continue to gate things off and provide people with premium experiences that are well curated that they can't get elsewhere. That's where I found my success as a producer of long form ebooks, is exceptional curation and good experiences that people are willing to part with their information for. I think that there's power in that. The problem is it just has to be really good. And in this, if you're trying to spin up a content program, if you don't already have an audience that will buy into that, it's very hard to get gated content off the ground. And so you need something that looks like a flywheel, where you create a gated asset and then you repurpose it across visibility channels publicly available in order to build the interest that maybe convinces people to make a download. You do that for a long time, and then you can start to expect to see results when you release a new gated asset. The problem is that you have to spin it up.
Yeah, it makes sense. And I guess obviously if you are like an industry leader, it's going to be a lot easier to spin that up than and get traction than if you're just like a startup or something. It's going to take a lot longer.
Yeah. That's the problem. I don't think enough people ask themselves is, am I worth it? Am I as an entity worth somebody parting with their money or their information? And SEO can't really fix that. It used to be that with the right tactics, you could you could show up in places you didn't belong, you didn't deserve to, and it would work. But that kind of stuff is, there's so much noise that being more noise, I don't think is going to cut it anymore. You have to really have a strong belief in the fact that you do deserve to be where you are, and then you have to prove it. And that's how you get visibility in a channel.
Yeah, great points. And talking about communities, it came to my mind that there is, I'm trying to get this off the ground, but if you go to WhatsApp and you go to the groups and you type in, search for Sean, I've got you can get the latest updates on the channel, some of the biggest stories in digital marketing. It's just like a little thing I'm trying to get off the ground. But, if you want to kind of get,
I'll do that.
Yeah. So if people are interested in that, then definitely look at it. It's free, obviously, and it's just on your WhatsApp. So, just to finish off, Ben, you wanted to say something?
Oh, I do have a thing to promote. I hope that's okay.
Yeah.
My mom passed away in 2020, and she was an author. She wrote a very British political satire book that I just republished on Amazon, and it's called Queenie's Teapot. It's about what would happen if the British government threw out democracy and decided that the government would be done like jury duty. So you get a summons, and he's like, "You're going to be the minister of whatever." And so that is, I just wanted to plug that.
Yeah, cool. We'll chuck in a link in the description. And
thank you.
But yeah, thank you so much, Ben. Again, it was great to get your insights, some great points made there. So yeah, really appreciate your time.
I appreciate the opportunity, Sean. It's truly a pleasure to talk to you, to be on the same podcast that so many fantastic industry names have been on. Like, you called me an OG. I don't think anyone's described me that way before. Thank you.
It's been a pleasure. So thank you.
Absolutely, Sean. Thank you.